I'm writing this because last night I found myself triple-checking the lock on my bedroom door. Something I've never done in 37 years of living alone. The hospital filed an incident report, but the security team says there's no footage thanks to the blackout. And my supervisor is already hinting that I overreacted. If anyone is ever going to believe what really went on, the story has to live somewhere public. So here goes. I'm a biomedical equipment tech at St. Callista's. That means I crawl around behind MRI scanners and heart monitors whenever they blink red at 3 in the morning. Yesterday was one of those calls. A thunderstorm had already rolled through, rattling the windows, but the power stayed on long enough for me to get the email. Coil overheated, system fault 62. I drove in, swiped my badge, and noticed that the ER was weirdly quiet. No orderlies pushing gurneys, no parents on plastic chairs. The first jolt hit while I was halfway down the diagnostic wing. Everything went pitch black, emergency lights humming a second later like angry bees. I've worked plenty of outages, but this felt wrong. The generator should have kicked the main hall fluorescents back on. My phone had 1 bar, and hospital Wi-Fi was down. Still, I knew the route to Biomed by memory, so I kept my hand on the railing and counted doors. That's when I heard the squeak of rubber soles behind me, matching my steps. I stopped, pretended to rummage in my toolkit, gave whoever it was a chance to pass. The footsteps stopped too. I called out, "Maintenance, need a light?" No answer, just breathing. When I flipped my flashlight on, I caught a white uniform pivoting into an exam room, too fast, like it had been waiting for the beam. I figured maybe a nurse got spooked and shrugged it off, but the hairs on my arms stayed up. I kept moving, more quickly. Biomed is in the basement. No windows, just cinder block and pipes. When I reached the door, my badge reader was dead. The emergency override is a physical key kept at security, 7 floors up. I muttered a couple of choice words, turned around, and nearly dropped the light. The nurse was 30 feet down the hall, half hidden behind a crash cart. Pale face, no name badge. But the scariest part was how she kept tilting her head like she was memorizing my features. I'm not a small guy, but I've been jumped before, once during a psych ward restraint course, and I can recognize predatory posture. I said something lame like, "Hey, you okay?" And she answered by humming. Just a soft nursery rhyme tune. Then she started walking. Slow, deliberate, rolling the cart in front of her like a shield. I backed toward the stairwell. The flashlight flickered. The batteries were fresh. I'd checked them that afternoon. She whispered, "You shouldn't be here when it's dark." The stairwell door opened without a badge, thank God, and I took the steps 2 at a time. I heard metal clang. She'd abandoned the cart and was following. On the 3rd floor landing, I tried the main corridor, but the magnetic locks were dead and the handle wouldn't budge. Footsteps closed in. My rational brain iced over. Instinct took charge. I barreled upward to the roof access, hoping to cross to the adjacent parking tower. There's an old service bridge no one uses. Roof hatch was bolted, but maintenance had left the wrench bracket unlocked after last month's HVAC swap. I cranked the bolts, shoved the hatch, felt night rain smack my face. I glanced back once. The nurse's cap appeared 2 flights down, her hands bleeding where she'd scraped the railing. Smile never moving. I hauled the hatch closed and bolted it from the outside. The bridge was slick and half collapsed, but I made it over the alley and pulled the fire alarm in the garage. By the time security swept the building, the grid was back up. They said all staff were accounted for. Nobody matched my description. The camera in the stairwell malfunctioned. My supervisor hinted I'd exaggerated, maybe overworked. Funny thing, in the outage report, someone had manually unlocked the Biomed door at 2:11 a.m., the exact minute I saw her in the hall. Tonight I'm installing another deadbolt at home. I know she's still out there, waiting for the next blackout. I'm finally writing this because my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now actually, keeps telling people I'm lying about what happened in the Kettle Ridge backcountry last October. I need something in writing before the details fray, maybe so I can reread it when the nightmares reset. If you booked one of those shoulder season special cabins via the state park website, cancel now. The website lists cabins 1 through 6. The ranger station hands you keys. Nobody warns you about cabin 7. I booked it because the price was absurdly low, and the brochure promised heated water and solar power. Lee and I were both broke graduate students. Field botany for her, environmental stats for me. So hiking in between classes sounded perfect. We checked in Wednesday, midday, bright sun, leaves already gone slick underfoot. The ranger who handed us the key didn't look up from his crossword. No other cars in the parking lot. Off-season, remember. The air smelled like wet pennies. Metallic. The first weird thing was the extra path. The posted map showed 6 parallel spurs branching off the main fire road, each ending at a numbered cabin. Our keyring said Cabin 3, but halfway to it, we found a narrow offshoot, freshly raked. No leaf cover, no number sign. Lee wanted to explore. Botanists can't resist unmarked trails. We walked maybe 50 meters before I heard a shutter click. Old school camera, not a phone. Distinct metal spring. I spun around. Nobody. That night, rain pounded so hard, the solar inverter chirped low-voltage alarms. Around midnight, Lee shook me awake. She'd heard the camera click again, right outside the thin plywood wall. I told her it was probably a branch tapping under wind load, but I still got up and checked the latch. The hasp was twisted like someone had tried to pry it. Footprints everywhere, of course, muddy hiking boots, our own included. Impossible to tell. Morning cleared crystal blue. Lee went to sketch moss samples by the creek while I boiled coffee. When she returned, she had a Polaroid in her hand. An actual instant photo, edges curling. The shot was of me, asleep, mouth half open, timestamp scribbled 4:12 a.m. My stomach dropped. Whoever took it had been inside the cabin. The angle came from the loft rail above our bunks. We decided to pack and hike out, but our backpacks were missing. We found them 20 yards into the woods, suspended from a branch with paracord. Contents gutted, food gone, map shredded, my multi-tool stuck into the tree like a threat. Lee lost it, started screaming our coordinates. That's when the whistling started. 3 rising notes, pause, 3 again, from multiple directions. I grabbed the hiking pole as a makeshift spear and pulled Lee west. The fire road couldn't be far. I wish I could say we kept our heads, but adrenaline makes you stupid. A clearing opened, and there it was. Cabin 7. Bigger, older, windows boarded. Front door hung open. Every instinct said keep going, but the whistling closed the circle behind us, voices crunching through wet leaves. "Inside!" I shouted. We barricaded the door with a rotted dresser. The cabin reeked of ammonia and old camp fuel. On the walls, Polaroids, dozens people sleeping, eating, crying, some dated years back. I recognized the ranger from yesterday in one, younger, tied to a chair. Footsteps thudded on the porch. A calm male voice said, "Photographs preserve truth. Leave one of you, and the other walks." Lee clenched my arm so hard her nails broke skin. I spotted a flint striker and 2 fuel canisters. Whoever lived here had left in a hurry. I sparked the fuel, shoved the flaming can toward the wall of photos. The fire caught instantly, smoke choking. A shadow kicked the door. The dresser slid. I hoisted the second can and waited. As the door cracked, I hurled the can. A howl, then silence, except the crackle. Lee and I smashed the boarded window with a chair leg and dove out, rolling down the slope. We sprinted until the ranger station antennas peaked above the tree line. Park police found cabin 7 still burning. No bodies. Too much heat, they said. They questioned us for hours. But the station cameras were offline. They insist only 6 cabins exist. Funny, their own key inventory lists a missing tag. #7. I'm typing this on my lunch break because HR finally lifted the gag order after the settlement. Technically, I can speak as long as I don't name the company, so I'll call it Argon Solutions. If you read the local news about a downtown evacuation last December, this is the side they didn't print. I was part of the year-end audit team. 5 of us trapped in a 32-story glass toothpick, cranking through invoices so the execs could cash bonuses. The building empties at 6 p.m., but we stayed until midnight for 3 nights straight. On the 3rd night, the elevators went into maintenance mode right after the last janitor clocked out. That wasn't weird. Motion sensors sometimes freak during storms. What was weird was the projector flicking on by itself, flashing a single PowerPoint slide. Pay me what I'm owed. Jared, our junior analyst, laughed and blamed it. I wasn't so relaxed. I recognized the font. Calibri 20 bold, our report standard, which only our department used. I also knew the elevator override code had been changed last week. New strike security. I texted building control. Message failed. Internal phone line buzzed dead. We tried stairwells, both locked by deadbolts from outside. That shouldn't be possible. Fire codes mandate push bars. Someone had physically altered them during the day. An hour ticked by while we tried wiring a call through the conference speaker. That's when the lights cut, replaced by projector beam like a theater. New slide. A selfie of our former coworker, Diego, holding a cardboard sign. Fired after injury. He'd lost 2 fingers to a jammed collator last spring and got the classic corporate send-off. NDA and a tiny severance. He'd been mild-mannered, a dad of 3. Apparently the strike chaos was his window. Candace wanted to smash a window and rappel. Crazy but rational at 29 stories up. Before we could argue, every monitor in the office flicked on, showing live CCTV of us, angle switching, time-stamped real time. Diego's voice crackled over the PA. You have 7 minutes to wire $45,000 to the GoFundMe link on screen. Legal can reimburse it later. Jared swore, started typing into the company expense portal. It hung at server unreachable. Candace tried calling 911 from her cell. No service. Wi-Fi routers mounted under each desk blinked green, meaning Diego had isolated the network. Flash forward approximately 90 minutes. Hard to judge with emergency lights strobing. But we'd torn apart ceiling panels tracing Ethernet bundles, none led outside. Diego had rerouted them into a locked supply closet. He pinged us again. 1 minute, then the sprinklers dump sodium hypochlorite. Not lethal, but your clothes will bleach. Tone still calm, almost apologetic. We poured coffee into the projector, shorting it, hoping to blind his view. Didn't matter. The CCTV was separate. Candace finally found a loose HVAC hatch, big enough to crawl. We belly scooted through fiberglass dust until we reached the adjacent legal department. The sprinklers triggered behind us with a hiss. Chemical smell wafted through the ducts. Phones in legal still had dial tone. Diego hadn't patched them. I called the after-hours security desk in the lobby. A guard answered, confused. Said cameras showed nobody on 29, even though we were waving under one right then. That's when I understood. Pre-recorded loops. Diego must have slipped in earlier, spoofed the feeds. SWAT breached within 40 minutes, cutting a hole in the facade with a thermal lance like a sci-fi movie. They secured us, then swept the floors. Diego was gone, but left a USB taped to the CFO's chair. Video of his injury, HR dismissal meeting, and that night's events. The footage hit social media before sunrise. Argonne paid, quietly. Official statement blamed foreign cyber sabotage, but settlement checks arrived. I can't use hand sanitizer without smelling bleach. Diego's GoFundMe reached twice his target. I still expect projector light whenever the office goes quiet. I needed to get this off my chest because tomorrow is exactly 10 years since the Riverbend Charity Marathon, and the organizers keep emailing me about a Legacy Runners reunion. They don't know I haven't run a mile since that day, or that I still avoid bridge overpasses, so here's why they can take me off their list. I'd been part of the varsity track duo with Mason all through college. He was the sprinter, I was endurance. Senior year, he tore his Achilles during a stupid rooftop parkour stunt I bailed on last minute. Scholarships vanished. He dropped out. Fast forward 3 summers. I'm fundraising for kids' cancer research. Mason's ghosting everyone. Then, 2 weeks before race day, he texts, "See you at the 18-mile mark. We need closure." The message smelled like unfinished business, but I tried to believe in forgiveness. Race morning was brutal. 102 degrees Fahrenheit heat index. Asphalt shimmering. 40,000 runners packed the start corral on Highway 14, hemmed in by guardrails and sponsor balloons. I was pacing the 2-hour group. Plan was steady 9-minute miles. Mason wasn't registered. I assumed he'd meet me in the spectators. At mile 8, a volunteer handed me a bottle with my name Sharpied on the label. I took 2 gulps before I noticed the aftertaste. Bitter, metallic. Then my stomach cramped like barbed wire. I forced myself to jog walk until I reached the medical tent at 10 miles. Medics took vitals, said dehydration, offered transport. I waved them off. Pride is a hell of a drug. Back on course, cramps pulsing. I scanned faces along the fence. Around mile 16, the crowds thinned. Highway veered into a shaded exit ramp closed for the race. That's when Mason stepped out from behind a water station banner, bib pinned to an obviously fake shirt number. He fell into stride beside me like no time had passed, grin too wide. "Figured we'd finish together," he said, matching my limp pace easily. I mumbled something about the heat. He nodded toward my bottle. "You shouldn't drink random stuff, man. People do awful things to frontrunners." My legs wobbled. Adrenaline flashed anger clearer than sun glare. "What did you give me?" I hissed. He shrugged, pulled out a second bottle, labeled with his own name but full of clear liquid. Lessons hurt. The course marshals were minimal in that stretch. Volunteers busy directing traffic at the interchange. Spectators were sparse. A family under an umbrella. 2 teens filming TikToks. I reached for the emergency phone at the portable generator pole. Mason slapped my hand away so casually nobody noticed. He kept pace, talking about scholarships, surgeries, debt. I tried to speed up, but the cramps knifed. He said, "I trained for 18 months to watch you fall behind." I considered tackling him into the divider, but crowds returned up ahead near the overpass. I needed witnesses, maybe medical. The road kinked. On the left, the guardrail dipped, overlooking a dry culvert. Mason suddenly yanked my arm sideways. I stumbled, nearly pitching over the rail. Cheers drowned my yell. The crowd thought it was a friendly slap. I clawed Mason's bib, paper ripped, revealing a fresh tattoo of a stopwatch frozen at 0 o'clock. "This is where timing ends," he whispered. I turned, intent on retaliating, but a hot wave of nausea blurred the lane lines. Someone screamed behind us. A runner collapsed. Heat stroke, maybe. Race officials rushed toward that commotion, not us. Mason used the distraction to hop the rail and vanish down the embankment. I slumped against a light pole until paramedics arrived. They pumped fluids, found traces of ricinoleic compound, castor bean derivative, in my blood. Not enough to kill, just to cripple. Police report lists unknown suspect. Marathon video shows nothing. The family with the umbrella blocked the lens. Mason's social profiles deleted that afternoon. Last month, a buddy sent me a podcast about an ultra-marathoner who collapsed at mile 90 under similar circumstances. She'd once beaten Mason's 10K PR in college. I never clicked play. Maybe tomorrow I'll watch the reunion livestream, see if any strangers linger near the 18-mile marker. Or maybe I'll just keep pretending I don't miss running. I'm still at the airport lounge, flight home delayed. So I figured it's as safe a place as any to recount what happened at the Beacon Hotel last night before the memory warps. If anyone remotely connected to building code reads this, please audit that place. I checked into room 1712 for a 2-day conference. Single king, skyline view. At 11 p.m., a shrill alarm jolted me up. Evacuate immediately. I've done my share of fire drills. My mom was a volunteer firefighter. So I tossed on sneakers, grabbed my laptop, and opened the door. Hall lights were dim, smoke hazy, but not thick. 2 middle-aged tourists in robes yelled about no elevators. Stairwell S3 was across the hall. I followed the green sign. The handle burned my palm. Too hot. That meant active fire on the other side. Textbook lesson. I pivoted to stairwell S4 farther down. Handle cool. Door opened. But instead of stairs, I found a dead-end maintenance landing with plywood where steps should be. A fresh, under-renovation stencil crossed the plywood. Renovation wasn't in any guest memo. I heard boots behind me. The night manager, Mr. Dwyer, suited up in a bright vest, radio in hand. I said, "Stairs are missing." He smiled too broadly. "Temporary. Follow me to the express lift." Every hotel on Earth tells you never use lifts during fire. But he flashed a plausible story. The alarm was a water pressure fault, no real flames. I smelled smoke, though. He ushered me and maybe 8 groggy guests into service elevator 2. Doors closed, carriage jolted, then nothing, stuck between floors. Dwyer held his radio to his mouth, but never pressed the button. He just stared at the ceiling. Minutes passed. Smoke seeped through ventilation slots. The tourist couple panicked. Dwyer hummed tunelessly, hands clasped behind back. I realized he hadn't tried the emergency phone. I dialed it myself, no line. I pulled out my phone. 0 bars. Strange, because reception had been fine. Dwyer finally spoke. "Steel box, fireproof, best place to be." He was sweating, but not anxious, more excited. I pressed him. He said renovations had disabled sprinklers on all odd floors. So we isolate the problem here. That's when the lift dropped half a foot, metal shrieking. I counted the occupants. 1 kid, 4 adults, Dwyer, me. Capacity fine. But the display read override mode. I remembered a Reddit post about key switches managers use during VIP evacuations. I wedged my hotel card into the doors. Thin gap opened. The shaft hissed like a chimney. Smoke thicker below. We were descending slowly, not stuck. Dwyer rushed to block me. I elbowed his throat, years of Krav Maga thanks to ex-military dad, and dragged him away from the panel. The kid's mother smashed the alarm bell until her hand bled. No response. I pried the inspection hatch overhead. Above, an access ladder. Classic movie move, but beats suffocating. We boosted the kid first, then the rest. Dwyer tried to yank my ankle. I kicked him square, and he collapsed. I climbed out last. The shaft was cloudy but cooler. 2 floors up, a landing door read 17. I jammed the safety latch with a pen and forced it open. The corridor was empty. Alarms silent now. Sprinkler heads were taped over with painter's plastic. I led the group down intact stairs to the mezzanine. Lobby windows glowed orange. A trash bin fire roared near reception. Sprinklers obviously offline. Front doors chained from outside. Who chains exit doors? I spotted a delivery bay sign. We threaded stockrooms until we hit a loading dock. Fresh air punched my lungs. Sirens wailed blocks away, but none near the beacon. We flagged a patrol car. The officers found Dwyer unconscious in the elevator when they pried it open. He had scorch marks on his hands, as if he'd been holding a hot cable. Fire department discovered accelerant at 3 separate locations. Arson, insurance scam theory. Beacon's parent company is already lawyering up. I'm switching to short-term rentals for future trips. At least if the host tries to burn the place down, I won't be locked inside a steel coffin. I'm posting from my sister's couch, 3 towns over, because I need objective eyes on this story before I decide whether I'm losing my mind. If anyone's from Harrowfield and has weird daylight savings memories, please speak up. I moved to Harrowfield 6 weeks ago to renovate my late aunt's cottage. My partner Jules joined the next weekend. The place is quaint. 1 main street, a diner, a clock tower that's stuck at 317. Everyone waves. Nice, right? Trouble started the night before we fell back for daylight savings. The mayor, Mrs. Kearney, knocked to remind us that the town observes a safety curfew during the time change. No one outside between 1 and 4 a.m. tradition, she said. Jules thought it was adorable. I found it cultish. At 1:30 a.m., I woke to footsteps on gravel. I peeked. Townsfolk in reflective vests paced the street in synchronized lines, stopping under each lamppost, checking watches, then moving on. Jules slept through it, or so she claimed. Next morning, she insisted the footsteps were probably my dream. She even laughed about my city paranoia. I shrugged it off. Renovations kept us busy. 2 days later, I discovered our wall clock missing an hour. Literally. The hand skipped from 1 to 3. The hardware store owner said that's how clocks are sold here, to discourage confusion. Jules acted like she'd heard it before. That evening, she suggested we join the town for turnback pie at the diner. Inside, a chalkboard read, "Welcome home, long-timers." Locals clapped when we entered. Someone handed Jules a commemorative pin shaped like the clock tower. I didn't get one. That night, I confronted Jules. Why was she acting like the curfew and missing hour were normal? She sighed, pulled out her phone, showed me a town brochure, digital, highlighting the traditions. I swore that brochure hadn't existed last week when I researched. She said maybe I overlooked it. Gaslighting 101. I set a trail camera on the porch for proof. Next morning, the SD card was wiped except one new file. A 5-second clip of me sleeping, time-stamped 2:03 a.m., curfew time. Jules claimed I'd probably said it wrong. Over the next week, hardware disappeared. First my wristwatch, then my phone charger, anything tracking time. Jules smiled more, talked in we statements about town projects, called Mrs. Kearney by first name. I started stashing items in the car. 2 nights ago, on the eve of spring forward, curfew returned. I pretended to sleep, pocketed a pepper spray. At 1:10 a.m., the front door creaked. Jules whispered to someone, "He's almost ready." I slipped out the back. I circled to the street. The townsfolk marched again, each carrying antique pocket watches. Mayor Kearney raised a brass bell. Jules stepped beside her, wearing a reflective vest. I yelled her name. She startled, but the mayor gripped her shoulder. "It takes time to adjust," the mayor told me. "Some people resist letting go of wasted hours." I shouted that they were drugging residents. Laughter rippled. 2 men approached. I backed toward my truck. One held a syringe. I pepper sprayed and bolted, tires spitting gravel. I drove until sunrise, straight to my sister's. Jules hasn't answered texts. Harrowfield's website, which I swear didn't exist, now features a banner. Celebrate harvest savings, lose an hour, gain a life. My aunt's deed? County clerk says it transferred to Harrowfield Historical Society weeks ago. Signature looks like mine. Tomorrow I'm filing fraud reports, but I keep second-guessing details. Did I sign something in the diner? Did I misread the brochure date? If the town's goal was to steal time, they're succeeding. I'm tossing this into the void because the city council press release about last night's museum incident glosses over the freakiest part, and I can't sleep until someone else knows. I was one of the 4 docents on after-hours rotation at the Aldwych Museum of Natural History. Our job was routine. Oversee a private fundraiser tour, lock the halls by 11 p.m., run inventory, leave. At 8 p.m., the power grid failure rippled across downtown, museum included. Backup generators lit emergency strips along the floor. We herded the donors to the foyer. Security Supervisor Malik radioed that the main server room smoke detector triggered, but sprinklers hadn't. He and I headed down while the others calmed guests. The server room door was ajar, acrid smell inside. Racks powered off. On the floor lay a black jumpsuit and a museum ID badge. My own photo. Accurate, except the issue date was 3 years earlier than I started. Malik frowned. I laughed nervously, assuming prank. We logged the evidence. When we returned upstairs, the donors were gone. Docent Ellie said they'd left through the side garden exit with you pointing at me. Infrared cameras later confirmed I'd never left basement. Malik and I split up to search wings. 5 minutes later, I received a text from Ellie. Need you in Egyptian suite. Problem, no signal in blackout. Yet the message had perfect timestamp. I hustled anyway. In the suite, ancient sarcophagi loomed. A figure in docent blazer stood at the far end, back turned. I called out. They mimicked my voice. Be right there. Chills dominoed my spine. I stepped closer. Identical height, haircut, everything. The figure walked behind a pillar. When I rounded it, room empty, exit doors sealed by magnet locks. I radioed Malik. Static. Then his voice. Found your twin on roof. Following. Roof access requires 2 keys. Only security has them. I sprinted 6 flights. On the roof, I found Malik handcuffed to an HVAC vent, unconscious. His master key ring missing. Radio smashed. He'd been tasered. Burn marks on neck. City lights flickered as power grid tried to reboot. We dragged Malik below. Police arrived within minutes. The grid failure triggered multiple alarms citywide. While they interviewed us, a new emergency emerged. The West Wing's motion detectors deactivated at the exact moment a fire suppression system discharged halon gas, freezing the climate control cases. When we regained access, several artifacts were gone, replaced by replicas so precise our registrar couldn't tell until X-ray. Security footage for that wing had been overwritten with loops of empty corridors dated 4 nights ago. Detectives concluded a professional impersonator had attended staff training sessions for weeks, learning routines, voices, even gait. Footage from outside showed someone wearing my build escorting the donors to a waiting utility van, license plates altered to match museum transport. Donors' phones later received polite apology emails from an address 1 character off our official domain, promising refunds. The heist was slick, but the impersonator slipped. The fake ID used a stock photo background only issued before the 2021 renovation. Cyber forensics traced server room tampering to a local print shop's Wi-Fi. Police raided it at dawn, found 3D printed molds of staff faces, including mine, and half-melted artifacts. The impersonator escaped, detonating an EMP that wiped surveillance drives. So yes, authorities intervened, but recovery's partial, and the mastermind still loose. Earlier tonight, my doorbell rang. On the porch lay a museum visitor pass with yesterday's date and my name. No camera footage. Signal jammer, maybe. I think the impersonator wants me to know the game isn't over. When the grid next flickers, check the badge of whoever's standing beside you. I kept quiet for 9 summers, but the anniversary flyers on every lamppost brought it all back, and I owe the newbie volunteers a warning before Saturday's Heritage Day turns into another incident. I've lived in Briar Hollow since birth. Population maybe 1,500 on a good weekend. Our claim to fame is the century-old grain silo the town council converts into a slide for the festival. I was on the planning committee in high school when the first missing kid during crowd surge rumor surfaced, and I was the one who found the kid, Becca Turner, curled behind a hay bale 10 minutes later. Everyone chalked it up to kids wandering. Fine. Fast forward to the last festival I ever worked, the one tourists still reference on Reddit as Silo Stampede. I'd just finished my library science degree and took the gig because the pay was better than shelving books all summer. Festival day was bright, no clouds, music from a cover band so loud the roosters stopped crowing. My task? Monitor the slide line, radio any bottlenecks. At 11 a.m., the mayor announced the time capsule raffle, crowd thick as a farmer's market. I spotted a woman up front waving a dusty Polaroid at me. She looked late 60s, linen dress, wide-brimmed sun hat, definitely not local. She said, "You're repeating the pattern," and tried to hand me the photo. Image of the silo entrance boarded up, scribbled date 1974, 3 years before my parents were born. Before I could ask questions, a surge of kids begged for the slide, and she melted into the throng. Noon hit, and the silo interior lights shorted, turning the tube slide dark. I radioed for maintenance. Response was static. A gaggle of scouts insisted the ride was fine, so I let a few through. Crowd swelled, parents filming. Then the screams started, one after another tumbling out, skin scraped, eyes wide. They babbled about someone inside grabbing ankles. I stopped the line, tried to climb up the exit chute, got about 5 feet before something yanked the flashlight from my hand and whipped it deeper in. It wasn't a mechanical catch. It was a deliberate pull. We evacuated the queue to an open field. That's when I realized 3 kids, Riley, Jonah, and Kay, were unaccounted for. In less than 4 minutes, security drones and parents formed the biggest search Briar Hollow had ever seen. But the silo door seemed to have grown impossible to pry. Fire department brought a rotary saw. Blades snapped. Whole crowd watched, heat blazing off metal, kids crying. I remembered the Polaroid and found it in my vest. Flipside carried a note. To open the silo, ring the harvest bell thrice. Briar Hollow's retired church bell sits on a wooden frame across the fairgrounds, usually just decor. I ran, dodging funnel cake lines, and grabbed the sledge kept as a photo prop. Nobody tried to stop me. Everyone focused on the sealed silo. I slammed the clapper 3 times. The bell's tone cut through the carnival music. Generators flickered. Merry-go-round halted mid-spin. Door hinges groaned like bending rebar. A wind burst out, reeking of moldy corn, and the missing kids spilled onto the grass, eyes glazed but physically fine. People cheered. EMTs did quick checks. I turned to show the mayor the Polaroid, gone from my pocket. So was the stranger. Town council blamed a pressure differential in the old structure. Media bought it, but I dug county records. That same silo was welded shut in 1974 after a trio of kids vanished for 5 hours, returned unharmed but mute. Each decade since, whenever the festival skipped ringing the bell during the noon raffle, someone went missing. I resigned, moved to archive work at the county seat, tried to forget. Now the council reinstated Heritage Day after a pandemic break, and the flyers brag, "No more superstitions, slide open all day," I called the mayor. She laughed, said new safety rails are foolproof. Fine. Saturday at noon I'll be across the field with a hammer, ready to hit that bell again if I have to. If you attend, Carry your own flashlight, and don't let the crowd swallow you. Patterns repeat, not legends, patterns. I'm typing this from the next door diner because adrenaline still floods my hands, and I know the security guys will spin whatever they want. If you park in the Meridian Towers garage after midnight, read this. I drive rideshare nights to crush student loan interest. Around 2 a.m. I dropped a fare at the luxury condos, decided to hit the restroom on level B3 before grabbing coffee. Garage was typical city concrete, humming with sodium lights. My phone went from 4 bars to no service the second the elevator door closed. Annoying, but common below ground. I stepped out, and the elevator behind me dinged, doors staying open like it had sensor trouble. Whatever. I headed to the public restroom alcove. Door locked. While I jiggled the handle, a voice behind me said, "Car trouble?" I turned. Guy, mid-30s, designer jacket, holding a folded umbrella, though the forecast was clear. He had a valet badge clipped to his sleeve, so I relaxed a hair. Told him no, just needed the facilities. He smiled. "Management shuts them after midnight, but there's a staff one in the east stairwell. I'll key you in." Rule 1 of gig driving: strangers with keys are hit or miss. But bladder pressure overruled caution. We walked toward the dim corner. The motion lights lagged. Halfway there, he asked what unit I was visiting. I said, "Just a driver." His smile froze, eyes scanning like recalculating. He gestured to a side corridor. "Shortcut." We turned. Suddenly, the valet radio on his hip crackled. Female voice. "Target is level B3 north ramp. Units converge." His expression morphed into panic, then resolve. He yanked my arm toward a maintenance door, hissed, "Wrong guy, get down." I yanked back, dropped keys, backed into the open driving lane. Engine noise echoed. Black SUV rolling down, high beams off, only parking lights. Valet shouted, "That's them!" and bolted between cars. The SUV accelerated straight at me. Instinct kicked. I sprinted opposite direction, ducked behind a concrete pillar. SUV tires squealed. Driver window down. Someone yelled a name not mine. "Ramos!" 3 silhouettes inside. I flanked Rose, heading for stairwell A. Door required fob. I punched the crash bar anyway. Alarm didn't even twitch. Battery pulled. The SUV screeched again, blocking ramps. A rear passenger hopped out, held a photo under dome light, glanced around. Photo looked vaguely like the valet. Mistaken identity. Terrific. I spotted the elevator still parked with doors open. The sensor had glitched earlier, but might still be my shot. I sprinted. Shooter, yes. I noticed pistol grip. Fired a round into ceiling sprinklers. Water rained, but didn't activate system. My shoes hydroplaned. I dove into elevator cab. Slapped. Door close and 7. Shot pinged metal. Door slid shut. Service key override locked the panel. Number stayed dark. Elevator began ascending anyway. Floor 1 dinged, doors parted to a marble lobby with 1 security guard drinking coffee. Club music faint beyond glass. I yelled, "Shooter in garage." The guard blinked, processed, reached for radio. Dead air. He hit a manual alarm. Nothing. I shoved past to front desk landline. Cut. Finally, he believed me. We barricaded lobby doors with planters. 10 minutes later, Metro Police flooded the block. Someone outside dialed 911 after hearing gunshots echoed up the ramp. Officers swept the garage, found the SUV abandoned. Rear plate taped over. They also found the valet unconscious, zip-tied behind a dumpster on B1. Wallet missing, but key fob still clipped. Apparently, kidnappers lifted a wrong valet earlier, realized mistake, returned, and confused me for him in lousy light. Official statement. Isolated carjacking attempt. I gave dashcam card even though my cam never faced the garage. Cops shrugged. Meridian management comped me a parking voucher like that's consolation. I'm buying a portable urinal bottle and sticking to surface lots. If a stranger asks your unit number in a dead zone garage, just keep walking. The toilets aren't worth it. I'm still 800 miles from home because the rental sedan is toast. But I've got downtime at this truck stop motel and a fresh cup of burnt coffee. So here's why my relaxing road trip with my brother ended in a roadside fistfight and a missing persons bulletin. Context. I'm a freelance photographer. My brother Eric rebuilds classic motorcycles. We decided to chase Route 50 across Nevada, loneliest road, to shoot abandoned gas stations for an art zine. Day 1 was perfect. Endless blue, sagebrush, banter. Night 2. We camped at a BLM pull-off. Eric mentioned hearing a baby crying in the scrub around 3 a.m. I chalked it to a coyote. Morning of day 3, the engine light blinked. Temp gauge fine. Oil fine. 10 miles later, the car sputtered and died in a cell dead zone. No biggie. We carried gallons of water, solar charger. While we debated hitching, an old green pickup crested the hill. Driver was a silver-beard rancher type, introduced himself as Cal. He offered a tow to his property, where he had better tools. Eric, gearhead, lit up. I hesitated, but we chained the dolly. Cal's ranch was 20 miles down a washed-out dirt track. No barns, just a corrugated metal workshop and a fenced enclosure of antique cars. He claimed to salvage parts for Vegas collectors. He poured lemonade, let us poke around. Inside the shop hung Polaroids of travelers beside broken cars, dating back decades. Same baby blue sedan appeared in several. I asked. Cal said it's his sister's old Chevy he carts out for parts runs. Something about the timeline felt off. The photo's sun fade suggested older than he looked. Eric helped Cal hoist our engine. I wandered the enclosure and spotted our rental's license plate already nailed to the wall, still crusted with the same Utah dust. Impossible. It had been on the bumper minutes ago. I called Eric over, plate gone, replaced by a different one. He laughed, thought I was pranking. My stomach dropped when I remembered the crying sound in desert night. Maybe someone lures travelers. I told Eric we should bail. He rolled eyes. Cal offered spare parts, promised fix by dusk. I feigned migraine, asked for a quiet room. Cal pointed to a retro trailer near Windmill. Inside smelled of bleach and old fabric. On the table sat a ledger listing dates and vehicle descriptions. Last entry hours, time-stamped an hour before we even broke down. Next page had 2 columns, stays and goes. Under goes, my name in pencil. Under stays, Eric's. Sun dipped, coyotes yipped. I shoved ledger in backpack. Found Eric placing spark plugs. I whispered, "We leave now." Eric refused. Car's nearly done. Cal approached, holding that baby blue Chevy's carburetor like a trophy. I blurted about the ledger. Cal's smile vanished. He dropped the carb, pulled a revolver from tool chest. "Some folk can't keep secrets," he muttered. Eric froze. I grabbed a crowbar, swung, caught Cal's forearm. Gun fired into roof. Eric tackled him, but Cal was wiry strong. I yelled for Eric to run. He wouldn't. During struggle, a stack of Polaroids spilled. Latest showed Eric under the car, timestamp seconds earlier. No camera in sight. Cal hissed. Pictures decide. Adrenaline spiked. I smashed a fluorescent tube over his head. Eric and I sprinted to the pickup, keys in ignition. We roared down the dirt track. Half-mile later, the engine cut. Fuel gauge inexplicably empty. Desert silent except wind. Headlights behind us. The baby blue Chevy, headlights dim orange. No driver silhouette. Eric panicked, bailed into sage. I followed. The Chevy idled past, vanished. We reached highway before sunrise, flagged a semi. Driver radioed state troopers. They searched mile markers, no sign of ranch. Dirt track ends at a dry wash. No tire prints. Troopers treated Ledger like a prank. I still have it. Entries stop after our names. Eric refuses to talk, won't return calls. Last text simply read, "Pictures decide." He's missing now. Left motel in middle of night. CCTV shows baby blue Chevy parked briefly. Cops haven't found it. I'm photocopying the ledger and mailing copies to every desert sheriff. If you see Polaroids of travelers at a swap meet, check dates. If one shows you before it's taken, run.